This episode is sponsored by the IoT job site, the world's only dedicated space for applying for and advertising IoT vacancies across the world. Register now for job alerts or get in touch via let's talk at theiotjobsite.com.
Hello and welcome to the IoT podcast. I'm your host for today, Brad King-Taylor. I'm head of UK business for Paratus People. Today we're joined by Francis Cepero, who is the director of vertical solutions for A1 Digital. Before we get into this, don't forget, whatever you're listening or watching on, please subscribe to the podcast. It gives you all the best insight and information for up and coming guests. So Francis, how are you today?
Hey, how you doing? Hi, Brad.
Yeah, very well, thank you. Very well. It's good to have you on. Really appreciate you coming on. So I suppose, right, without further ado, it's probably good that we just get straight into this. So,
Sure.
Introduce yourself, Francis. Let the viewers know who you are, your background in the industry, and how you got to where you are now with A1, and how you ended up in the crazy sector that we find ourselves in.
Very good. Thank you very much. And first of all, thank you for having me in this great podcast. I think we've been fans of yours for a long time, so we've looked at this. We really liked the format. So to my background in IoT, I think it's rather simple. I'm a very curious physicist who, by means of a lot of job changes, came to a business software company, one of the largest in the world, and then spent some years doing different things from programming, technology, to running enterprise architecture programs. And in that evolution, I came to the IoT world, basically. I used to be head of innovation technology for that company, which is SAP, I can tell you. And then I spent their times looking into technology and into IoT specifically. And then in 2017, I joined A1 Digital. And so basically, my approach to IoT, I would say I approach this from three different angles. I think the first one is from this kind of a strategic technology perspective. How important is this technology? How do you use it? What are the limits? Then from the organizational leadership side, running the company, running the department, the business unit at A1 Digital that takes a leadership position in this area of IoT and machine learning, and then building the product and the service portfolio, as well as the relevant capabilities in the organization. That's basically that's my perspective. It's a little bit of, I'm not a pure technologist, I'm not a pure business guy. It's just the mix of both.
No, that's great, and thank you very much for that, Francis. It sounds like you've got a great history and some really good credentials. So that's a bit about yourself. Can you give us an explanation of what A1 does and the key solutions that you offer?
Yeah. So at A1 Digital, we have one thing, and I believe that we will be repeating this all the time because this is the only thing that we really care about, is that we only want to keep our clients relevant in face of digital disruption. It's very simple. It's a really simple statement, right? And why is that? Because we've seen our customers, and not only our customers, many companies, especially small and medium-sized companies, struggle really, really hard when it comes to technology adoption, how to change the company processes, how to adopt new technologies, how to involve new technologies to get new insights, how to bring new business models. So all of this is being very hard to do. It's becoming very hard to do for those customers. And what we are doing is we are operating as a service provider, if you wish, and solution provider that keeps those customers relevant in the face of digital disruption. So how do we do that? Basically, and the way we do this is by helping them getting smart assets and smart insights in a secure cloud. And there you see the three components of the business, the three pillars of the business of A1 Digital. Let's start from the very beginning, which is our cloud. We have a cloud, our own European cloud offering, which is what you can see when you go to exoscale.com. You will see our European cloud offering, and it's all of it is done by, I would say, it's homemade from the bare metal up to the cloud fabric, so that you can get storage, network, and compute, plus a layer of platform as a service on top that you can get from us. That's exascale.com. It's a great cloud service provider. The second pillar of our A1 Digital offering is the security part. So there we do professional services for our clients, starting with penetration testing and some sort of assessments around security. But we also take care of next generation software defined networks, where we embed the security into the network offering towards our client. And last but not least, we do basically in my business unit, which is called vertical markets, we take care of IoT and machine learning related solutions and services. And they range from hardware design, firmware design, up to edge intelligence, connectivity, IoT platforms, private networks, machine learning platforms. So basically the full stack of IoT. And at the end, what we want to do for those customers, which I remind you, they are mostly small and mid-sized customers, is help them. Help them. We really want to help them, and we help them integrate into their operational technology and the IT business technology together. That's what we do.
Fantastic. And I think one of the key words there that I've picked up on is the word help. I think what you guys are doing, from what I can see, is really it's innovative, right? It's really good, and it looks like you're going in the right direction. You're already working among some of the world leaders within your sector, but I think with what A1 is doing is really that, like, you're there to help and push these companies forward. So I think you've helped around about 500 plus customers at the moment. So what is it that most people are getting wrong, Francis, when it comes to developing those IoT solutions that you touched on? And what is it they're doing wrong, and how are you as A1 helping them address those problems?
That's a very hard question, Brad.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah, that's a very hard question. Let me start probably by acknowledging that we have, yes, indeed, we have over 750 customers right now, and many of them, and I would say many of them, I would even say the majority of them have done the right thing, and they have done the right things right. Okay, so we have not seen many customers that I would say, didn't get it. So they all got it, and the majority, they got it, and they're really good. And we are really very, very thankful that we got the opportunity to help them on this road, being it with connectivity or with connectivity services, or you name it. But what I've seen in many conversations with non-customers and customers as well, there are two things that are, I would say, at the bottom of at the bottom of all this. And one is the lack of understanding about what it means to launch a complex IoT based connected product, which is at the end what they all do. They launch some sort of IoT connected product, being it a machine or being some sort of B2C offering. It doesn't matter. At the end, it's a thing that got connectivity, it got real time connection, and that connection is very important because it's between the end user and them as manufacturer. So that means the end user is expecting that that product will talk back, and will get some sort of additional service from that information that's sending back to the manufacturer. And sometimes we've seen those customers not being even ready to receive that information, that they just put the connectivity in there, but it's a connectivity done from a very different angles, from the angle from the outside in, from the inside out angle, sorry, which is, I want to provide better service to my machines, so I'll do this. But the customer is expecting much more. And so we've seen that really understanding all the things about the complexity, both in terms of technologies and in terms of what kind of organizations do you need to have in order to make that happen. That's a one thing that has been crucial for all of it, right? So we call, or at least I call, IoT products being transformational products, because for the operator, for those who use those products, and for those who manufacture those products, there will be a sort of a before and after story. You are a different company once you start using connected products, and you truly are a different company after you learned how to manufacture and service connected products and sell connected products to the market. And so it's a huge transformational process that we've seen. And when the customer lacks understanding about all the complexity, that's where things happen. And the second part is when they believe that their IT department can do everything. And then we explain to them that no, your IT department, you're lucky if your IT department can do some SAP stuff, keep the lights on, but the type of the quantity and quality of knowledge and experience that you need to have in order to launch an IoT solution, if you didn't have it before, you won't have it now. So you need a partner that can help you. And sometimes we are that partner. Sometimes we pass the business to other ones who are best suited for that type of business. But we definitely encourage our customers to have this partnership, this understanding first, strategic and operational, but also this partnership idea, because it's a very complex environment in which they are operating when they go into IoT products.
It's a great mantra. And you mentioned a couple of times complex. I'm sure I can see it, so the viewers will be able to see it. That whiteboard behind you looks quite complex on its own. So I don't know if you've written that. The transformational thing, I'm quite keen to touch on that. So obviously you mentioned that things are moving quite quickly and changing. Are there any particular use cases that you're seeing trend at the moment?
Um, in terms of use cases and trending use cases, so what we are seeing is I think first is we don't have a full visibility of the whole IoT industry. That's at least I cannot claim this for us, because this would be a know-it-all, be-it-all. That's not us. What we definitely are doing is we're focusing on six different industries, and this is construction, waste management, retail, manufacturing, um, then transportation and logistics obviously is a big play for us, and
Yeah.
everything around energies and utilities. So
Okay.
water, metering, smart metering, electricity, and so on. So right now, for example, we are still running a project, delivering a project of 1.2 million smart meters in Western Austria. So
Okay.
this is the type of big complex things that we can do, but we also do very small things like building a tracker for a customer, right? For some sort of transportation solutions. And so what we are seeing then is in those industries that there are special, I would say, special use cases. So for example, use cases we're seeing is from asset insights, people who wants to see what happens with their assets, where they're located, what is their output, what are the quality parameters. So all of the things, being those assets, moving assets or stationary assets, doesn't matter much. It's basically they want to see just the performance. And it's all about asset insights, as I said, energy consumption, quality control, performance management, energy management, condition monitoring, predictive maintenance, condition-based monitoring, by the way. So these are the main scenarios that we see. And then we see something very special, which is the whole area of building a connected product in itself, which is then when we work with manufacturers, with original equipment manufacturers, and they tell us, okay, so I need connectivity, I need intelligence, I need edge intelligence. How do I get this thing into this machine, right? So this is what we are. These are the scenarios that we are seeing. This is what we are more or less following through in our industries.
Yeah, amazing. So to take that and expand on that a little bit, trends are always changing, like as you touched on, and we mentioned that with a trend comes some of the ideas and the solutions that you've got into a bit there. So I think they're estimating around 41.6 billion devices or something crazy by 2025,
Yes.
which is madness.
Yes.
So obviously, as things are progressing through the life cycle, new things start to happen. So edge computing. let's have a little look on that. Why is edge computing so integral when it comes to the IoT market and the way that that's growing at the moment?
Yes, so that's let me address maybe at the beginning the whole story about the numbers and forecasts and projections. And I I tend not to believe in those numbers. And I've had very heated discussions with some high level consultants who claim that by 25, I think by year 25 we'll have 20 something billion connected devices. And so I don't believe we're going to have those numbers. We are on a much lower curve. And I don't
Okay.
also believe that, but I don't have the numbers to refute. So I don't have better projections. That's my point, right?
That's fine.
But I find the numbers really hard to believe and hard to count. How do you count 41
Yeah.
billion of anything? How do you count
Yeah,
25
that is a
billion of
great
anything,
point.
right? And so that's it. That's it. I think there is one thing that is really relevant, which is our business, the business of A1 Digital in the IoT space, is being a service provider and a systems integrator, a service and solution provider and a systems integrator of sorts. And so that means that in our business, we are facing, in a very logical way, a limited repeatability and limited scalability. So it's not that we have one business that scales hugely, because that's what we are trying to enable for our clients. So we ourselves, we don't see 10,000s of clients. What we see is 10,000 of devices at one client. So you're scaling here not by the number of clients, but by the number of devices.
Yeah.
That said, what it means basically is that you will have a go-to-market which is by customers of volume and not by volume of customers.
Yeah.
So it's a very different game as the one you have when you go into the software side. Into the software side, you scale by the number of clients that you have. Here, you scale by the number of devices that your clients have. And so, if we look at this and we look at the number of, let's say, at the end, what we are trying to do as a company, we are trying to, as I said, keep the customers relevant in face of digital disruption, but at the same time, very consistently lower their total cost of ownership for the solutions they create, right? And how do you lower the total cost of ownership of a digital IoT solution? That's where Edge comes in. What you're trying to do with Edge, which is Edge is all the compute and sensing and intelligence, if you wish, technology that is deployed outside of the data center into the edge of the data fabric, basically at the end of in the device. And so if we look at that, if we want to capture large number of devices, and we need to focus on those highly standardized cases, and we need to focus on repeatability at the edge, at the device level. And so that's when you start pushing the whole process, the whole analytical process out of the cloud into the edge, so into the device, so that the device basically becomes more knowledgeable, more responsive, and more autonomous. And these are the three main topics that will lower your total cost of ownership, right? So the next thing is that when you look at the, if you bring connectivity into a manufacturing environment, if you bring connectivity via private networks, which is, by the way, one of those graphics here, and once you have it in once you bring private 5G private connectivity, then you start getting something very, very, very special. Then you start getting this, for the first time, the technology fabric and the standards and the right location for the right decision that allows you to put all this decision making in industrial operations there where it belongs, basically at the edge in the machine. And I would say, once you have edge technology, you have for the first time a real-time, high-resolution management of the enterprise. So you understand the status of every machine in real time. You understand, you can predict certain things in real time. And one thing that few people are talking about, but I want to make sure that we talked about this in this podcast. Once you have predictions made based on data that you collect on the edge, those predictions can become input into additional predictions for other processes. And now you have basically what some big companies call the intelligent enterprise, but that's the way you enable this is by instrumenting the edge with sensors and this kind of sense and react scenarios. Once you implemented them, now you know exactly what happens in your company across your manufacturing processes, your secondary infrastructure, and now you can start bringing these things together, and you start raising the efficiency of each one of your operations, moving costs out, and understanding better how to react to unforeseen events in your company. So you can start doing basically scenario planning. Now you know what your true capability is once you have the edge implemented. That's how I think it's very, very important to implement an edge strategy in your company today, in any company, by the
Yeah,
way.
yeah, superb. And I think that was it was there was a word in the question that I used, integral. And I think a lot of the stuff you touched on there, improving efficiency, lowering costs, that's two of the main goals for a lot of companies, right? So
When you're in the cloud, right, you have a lot of efficiency gains because all cloud compute is made more or less equal, right? Let's take quantum compute outside of the. But once you have, so you try to go to standard computers, to standard compute functions, even to virtual compute functions, and so you have incredible scalability in your cloud operations. This is not what you
yeah,
have when you're down to the edge. The edge has limited compute power, limited memory, limited network capabilities, but it connects both fabrics, the operational technology fabric with the IT fabric. That's what it does. And
yeah,
so it's even if it's not, it doesn't scale that well, it's hugely important because then it passes information into the cloud uh, based compute and analytics, which do scale, right? So you have this great two levels, a central level of intelligence with a local level of intelligence.
amazing. So with that in mind, then out of the, I think you mentioned 6 industries that you're working in, are you seeing edge computing really have an impact on any of them in particular? Obviously, it's going to impact all of them, but any of them jumping out as key winners from this?
Yes, so I would say manufacturing is one of those. Retail could be another one. I believe construction, per definition, being something that happens at the job site. So the job site in itself is a huge edge environment. And so pushing edge technology into the construction site is something that we are currently testing. So we're developing in a project with some leading construction companies in Germany. We're developing if you want, the job site of the future. All right, so this is what we are. It's a nice marketing name, but at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is really bring connectivity and decision-making capabilities based on IoT to the construction site of the future.
Yeah,
And so when you look at industrial manufacturing with all the use cases we discussed before, from maintenance, from condition-based monitoring to prescriptive maintenance, that's in. When you look at industrial manufacturing with quality control, and that
yeah,
is something that I want to say really important, I believe. This includes the whole range of anticipatory quality control practices that you have, where you try to discover the error before it materializes into the system. So, for example, when you have a welding gun and on the robot, and by reading the voltage, the current, and temperature on that welding gun, you can imply whether the welding was done at the right quality or not. So you don't wait until someone down the process finds out that that thing was not weld properly. So instead of that, you do it right at the machine. You know that the machine did not perform according to the parameters that you were expecting. And how do you do this? By bringing machine learning at scale into the machine at the edge, right? And so energy and emission management, so the whole carbon footprint, also super important topics where edge technology will have a huge impact. And I think these are the scenarios. And yes, of course, one thing that comes to my mind is that there's something amazing going on right now in the area of telemedicine, where you have basically diagnostic devices that are being separated from the location of the hospital, that are being brought to the patient, and the diagnosis is being done somewhere else, but the measurement is being done at the patient's location, which is super, super, super important. So now that we're thinking about all these
Okay.
crazy scenarios where um, some
Yep.
rural areas don't have enough doctors, so now this is how you can solve. One way of alleviating those problems is by separating via technology the diagnostics from the location of the doctor, from the location of the hospital, and bringing it down to the patient where it's needed most. And so that is something amazing, and this is edge technology at its best, actually, right?
Yeah, that's superb, and that's going to have a lot of impact on a lot of lives in the right way. Even with the med tech, like you mentioned, but something you mentioned on making sure that the welding's right, like that's potentially a health and safety factor as well, right? As it
Yes,
goes down the
absolutely.
process. So edge computing is not just giving you more efficient data, but it's potentially life saving in some instances. So,
Yeah.
um, what are the considerations for you though with edge computing as we move forward with IoT? What are the challenges that you think some of the lesser involved industry might face?
Um, so here's the thing, Brad. I don't think that I have all the answers in this area. Obviously not. I can tell you only the experience that I've had and that we had through A1 Digital, right? So we've seen people interpreting the edge as something that you can take just your laptop computer, right? Connect it to a power supply, connect it to a set of sensors, and put it under the bridge. And I'm talking about literally under the bridge, so that you can do some sort of monitoring of special things. And then people are surprised what happens after 20 days of exposure to the sun, to temperature, humidity conditions, which are not designed, the laptop was not designed to comply with these edge conditions. And
Yeah,
so this is one of the limitations, right? So when you operate uh, in the edge or at the edge, you're operating under limited conditions. So you have high exposure to temperature, to pressure, to humidity factors. Even when you try to repair edge equipment, you will be exposing for that limited period of time that equipment to excessive humidity, excessive temperature maybe. So all of this needs to be taken into account. So you need to be able to use the right equipment for the right edge conditions.
yeah,
That's one thing that I would say. The other thing is some considerations is around the maintenance of those equipment. So the edge equipment
okay,
is also an IoT device. So you need to treat that equipment as well as an IoT device, right? So it's a little bit of recursion here, but it's really it's a really important thing. So that machine, that uh, let's say industrial PC, you need to monitor that the power supply works, that the batteries are working, that this is working, so the temperature is not very high, that it's not getting sun exposure for more than, let's say, 2 hours. So all of these things are important as well. So you need to manage the edge properly. And then last but not least, understanding what happens, what is the life cycle of an edge, but also from the perspective of your applications. So if your application is very data hungry and needs a lot of storage compute, you need to plan for this at the very beginning, because then running to the edge to change to add more storage, it's going to be very expensive, right? And so you
yeah,
rather plan, you need to be more, let's say, gracious at the beginning in the planning, more um, let's say positive thinking in terms of this is going to last for a longer time, because your application is going to get more data and more data, and you want to get it faster. And so all the things, as I said before, all the things that you could do in the cloud, you cannot do any of those on the edge. There is no scalability; it's limited. There is no sharding or any other compute tricks that you have on the cloud. you can't perform on the edge. You have it only this limited space and this limited performance. And that's just accounting for that. So taking care of the equipment, taking care of the operating conditions, and taking care of the life cycle. That would be advices that we will give to all the people.
Tell you what, Francis, for someone that doesn't have all the answers and only speaking from experience, you've done really well there. You're going to help a lot of people with that advice, and I think the key takeaway there is to use it correctly and know that it's got limitations, right? So,
Yeah.
amazing. What's next? What's next for A1, Francis? Where can you go from here?
I think we will continue. It's a good, also a very difficult question for me to answer because being a very curious person, I spend my time with my head doing some crazy things that have nothing to do with what we're doing today. And so like, it's very difficult for me to tell you this year we're going to do exactly this. But we have our technology roadmap. Okay. However, the one way that we found to be very how to say that very accurate to plan and prioritize our work is by keeping the focus on the one and only thing we focus on, which is our customers. So as we look at our customers and their life cycle and their maturity life cycle, we say, okay, so the next level would be we will be looking, for example, more standard and IoT applications where we can continue helping our customers reduce their total cost of ownership by telling them, look, this application is already 60% of what you need. We will help you with the rest 40%, but you don't need to develop it from scratch. And by the way, as everything we do is based on platforms, so that at the end of the day, you don't need to have all the bandwidth, what we call the ice below the lower part of the iceberg. This is done already.
Yeah.
Focus on what you can really focus or should focus on, which is um, you know putting more focus on the business side of things. We will help you with technology, and so we will add to this edge intelligence. We will add better connectivity options. We will add also uh, more edge computing is coming on our roadmap, technology roadmap. And we started this year, I think we started a partnership with Nordic Semiconductors. Of course, we started last year already, but this year we went public, and so we're building right now on the basis of the Nordic Semiconductor chip a whole set of edge functions, that will allow you to have the chip already pre-configured for connectivity, both with a cellular network as well with the Cumulosity platform, which is what we use as a foundation for our IoT platform. So it's all really, really great. We have great partners, and with those partners, we'll continue evolving that technology roadmap. So we'll have more more applications, more IoT solutions for construction, which is a central industry to what we do. We have great partners there, and we will continue just doing that. That's what we have ahead of us.
Exciting times, right? Not just for A1, but for the whole industry, the
Absolutely,
sector of IoT.
absolutely.
Yeah, amazing. From me, thank you so much for everything that you've just gone through. There is one more question that we do at the end of every podcast that comes from the previous guest. In this case, it's Ralph Varco, who's the MOD of IoT and Chief Growth Officer for Connexin. It's quite a curious question for me as well, because we work quite closely with the IT Security Foundation in the UK. So he wants to know, with IoT growing at such a speed that it is, and security is coming even more important. You mentioned at the start of the podcast, Francis, that one of your arms is on the security side of things. What's your personal advice on keeping your IoT connections secure and stable?
This is a fantastic question. Excellent question. Um, the way we look at security is that you need to be able to secure all the elements within IoT. So you need to be able to secure your firmware. You need to be able to use um, secure elements in your IoT stack. Ideally, or not ideally, but sometimes it is the same chip itself, right? So you can store certificates in there. You need to be able to secure the device. You need to be able to secure the communication between your device and the cloud. And at the end of the day, one thing that some people are thinking about, that we are also thinking about this right now, is how do we secure machine learning models, because they will be the essence of the analytical capabilities which we put into the device or into the cloud. So
Yep.
security, for us, security is everywhere. We are using a security framework for understanding and analyzing what is most important for our clients. We believe that our partners on the hardware side, they give enough attention. At least we test them regularly. They give enough attention to certain security elements that we take it. We don't take it for granted. We just test this every now and again. We will add to our security IoT security framework some white hat hacking, so that people understand what can happen to their devices once someone gets a hold of their devices, and how they secure those devices against this. But more than anything else, Brad, I think we will take care of continuously evolving. So it's an evolution, right? So
Yeah,
we already started
sure.
with this, but we will continue evolving the consistency and integrity of data transmitted from an IoT device into whatever application it is, right? So we want to make sure that applications understand that they can trust the devices, but they do this because they implement a zero trust policy. So that's an important thing as well. And we want to make sure that customers can trust devices and device manufacturers because they also implemented a zero trust policy where they can revoke certificates, they can revoke certificates for coding, they can revoke certificates. So it's people having full control of the operating environment and making sure that we don't have surprises in terms of data, in terms of coding, operating conditions. That's absolutely critical for the IoT space. And we will be focusing on that a lot in the next couple of, I would say, months and days even.
Amazing, fantastic question and a fantastic answer.
Thank you.
Francis, that's it. I mean, what an amazing podcast, right? Very, very insightful from all aspects. I really like the fact that what A1 are doing and how you're helping your customers. I like your attitude towards it all. It's just been amazing. So, from us, really, truly, thank you very much, and that's everything that we've got planned. So
Yeah, thank
amazing.
you. Thank you for having us. Thank you for the invitation, and happy to continue the collaboration with you guys. Thank you very much.
Good stuff. On that note, just for the viewers, where can they find you? What's your social medias, your website?
We are on LinkedIn, and our webpage is very simple one. It's a1.digital. That's it.
Simple,
Simple,
simple and effective.
very simple.
Perfect, Francis. Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks. Bye bye.
And guys, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Doesn't matter what you're listening or watching on, just please leave a like and a comment. It will give my team the best chance to leave you all the relevant information and what's coming up. It doesn't matter how you're connected, as long as you're connected. Until next time, thank you very much.